Welcome to the Folk School on Willow Creek, featuring University Distinguished Professor Tom Easern, singing and telling stories from the salon on Willow Creek.
I need a bed for the night, boys, and my horses need hay. I've been riding that grove line on the hottish highway. Standing by my window yesterday morning, without a thought of sorrow or of care, I saw the postman coming down the pathway, such a happy smile and jaunty air. He rang the bell and listened while he waited. Then he said, "Good morning to you, Jack." He little knew the sorrow that he brought me as he handed me that letter edged in black. I heard the postman whistling yesterday morning, coming down the pathway with his pack. He little knew the sorrow that he brought me when he handed me that letter edged in black. With trembling lips, I took the letter from him. I broke the seal, and this is what it said. "Come home, my boy, your poor old father wants you. Come home, my boy, your mother dear is dead. Your mother's words, the last she ever uttered. Tell my boy I want him to come back. My eyes are blurred, my poor old heart is breaking, while I'm writing you this letter edged in black." I bowed my head in sadness and in sorrow. The sunshine of my life, it all had fled. This postman brought that letter yesterday morning, saying, "Come, my boy, your mother dear is dead." It said, "Forget the angry words that were spoken. You know I never meant them, don't you, Jack? May the angels bear me witness, I am asking your forgiveness in this letter edged in black." Boy, that's about 3 minutes of high drama, isn't it? Now, those of you who may be into family history or local history, you run across these little documents in a file somewhere. Here comes an envelope or perhaps an enclosed card edged in black. You know, we've got them in our family history file, Suzanne, when the notice that came, who's passed away in the family or among the circle of friends, and that was 19th and early 20th century equivalent of a trigger warning when he saw that black edge around a letter or a card. In this case, there's all kinds of drama that only kind of comes out in the third stanza. "Come, my boy, your mother dear is dead. Forget the angry words that were spoken." So evidently the persona and his father have had it out, and he's left. Now the mother's passed away. He wants to reconcile. So much plot that's just compressed into those stanzas. Like, my goodness, there's just a little bit of literary genius in there, isn't there? No, there's a whole lot of literary genius in there. And the thing is, this didn't come from a refined poet. This came from a Tin Pan Alley composer. And tonight, our theme, what do I put the title on it? "Wringing Tears from a Hedge Post." You may know that old the old phrase, tearjerker. Can make a hedge fence post shed tears. It's Sentimental Ballads from the Gilded Age. And been thinking a great deal about where our folk song in the Great Plains comes from. I know it's very little rooted in the English ballad tradition, despite the fond wishes of some people at Harvard at the turn of the 20th century. It is, in fact, rooted in a variety of American traditions, Protestant hymns, Civil War songs that the veterans came home knowing. And by the time you get into the late 1800s, popular music. And it's popular music that I'm just getting a grasp on this. It was really written for music halls, mainly patronized by men. There's a certain amount of bawdiness in it, but also a terrific amount of sentimentality, because men in the Gilded Age in the 19th century, men were permitted to be sentimental. And the music hall was a place that would happen. It happened in eastern cities, west coast cities. It happened in the mining camps and the cow towns of the American West, the music halls. And then people, this is where Tin Pan Alley came from. The composers began to write songs for the music hall. And then the spin-off of that is, well, the ones that were socially presentable, they'd put them out in sheet music. About that time, when music hall music was reaching its height, along came Edison's cylinder recorder and player, right? So you could then send out cylinder recordings, and sheet music began to hitch up with that in marketing. And the sheet music then got the music out of the music halls into parlors, and then people were loaning the sheet music around, or, people who can play by ear, they'd hear somebody playing the thing in the parlor, they'd start playing it in their parlor, or maybe a dance band, a string band would hear it, somebody playing it on the piano, and they'd say, we could do that, not too many chords to it, and they begin to adopt it. Next thing you know, these songs that were composed for commercial purposes pass into folk tradition. And the song catchers, what you find is song catchers like Louise Pound and John Lomax and the rest of them in the early 20th century, they didn't have Google, they couldn't say, where's that song, where do these lines come from? And say, oh, sure enough, it was copyrighted to so-and-so in 1894. No, they caught it out of the air from some old cowboy or some old lady in Norfolk, Nebraska. And to them, it was a folk song, like the others. They had a sense maybe this is a little bit different, But nevertheless, once it's gone into the oral tradition, it's a folk song. And so getting a little bit better handle on what you might call the corpus of balladry and folk music on the Great Plains. And popular music then comes into it, certainly by the turn of the 20th century. Now, this song you just heard, The Letter Edge to Black, you may have heard that sung by, the Carter family. Or, through them, Johnny Cash began to sing it. Slim Whitman, Hank Thompson. So, my word, it's an honor roll. Wolf Carter, if you happen to be tuned in from Alberta. We have a few friends in Alberta that drop in now and then. And they should know that, by the way, our friends in Alberta, talking to you, Betsy, and all the rest of you, Alberta Premium is now available in the Fargo market. You no longer have to bootleg it into the country for me. Wolf Carter, Johnny Cash, a whole lineup of country musicians. Where did it really come from? Well, we find here, at the top of a page, this is called Secondhand Songs. It's a song research site. At the top of the page, there it is, Letter Edge in Black. First recording, 1897, unreleased, but recorded by Hattie, Nevada. Who the heck is Hattie, Nevada? Her married name is Harriet Woodbury. Born in 1861. Songwriter, mezzo-soprano. With her husband, Frank Woodbury, she owned and operated the Kansas City Talking Machine Company, founded in 1897, the year that she did basically a demo recording of this song, which she wrote. And she became known over the next few years as the Queen of the Songwriters. self-promoted as such, of course, because she's advertising all across the Central Plains. Not so much the Northern Plains, not so much Texas, but the Central Plains. That's their marketing territory. And that's the heart of marketing of the letter edged in black. Yeah. And then in later years, people look back on this and they say, this is an old song, an old folk song we used to sing. Can anybody remember the words for it? And then they write it into their newspapers. Well, this is kind of cool. And I think these songs enrich the body of Great Plains balladry. Don't suppose we got any new books showing up from NDSU Press. Don't talk about the press party yet.
Oh, okay.
You got anything new showing up?
Well, the newest one that arrived was the Dust Yourself Off book.
Dust Yourself Off.
And the ones in the works, the ones about to go to press.
What's next up?
In order that justice may be done, and this is the thorough research of the treaty laws from the Turtle Mountain Chippewa.
So you're mixing your titles. Oh, that's right.
The subtitle of it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's right. So it's a great book, and the people that I'm working with have been so kind and patient and good, and they're really looking forward to this coming out. I'm hearing this is the first book of its kind that explains all of the treaty laws and the broken laws, the way things were managed and mismanaged, and the Turtle Mountain Chippewa are very glad to have this story come out. Also, though, coming close on its heels is the All-American Turkey Show.
Oh.
When Grand Forks, North Dakota was the capital of the turkey world. I might have gotten that one mixed up a little bit.
Geez, Kelley, you're publishing actual history.
Yeah, well, following that,
outstanding.
I'll be working with Dr. Baggett and Dr. McGeorge about their 1977 women's, the North Dakota women attending this big conference in Houston.
So have you thought about taking like a day or 48 hours off after the big launch last night?
I've thought about it for about 3 minutes.
There you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to mention a fourth book because we haven't talked about it at all. It's called Shred. And
I don't know anything about this one.
It's about a marathon runner, Boston marathon runner out of Fargo, running in Fargo for practice.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah,
by Kevin Carolla. So I need to map these out because there's several books coming in the queue, but lots of good stuff. And
there are new ballads. Just this week, new things have surfaced, which I'm not working with right now, but we'll get to. We'll get to them in 2 weeks, all right? And we need to announce this. You remember, no Willow Creek Folk School next week this time. No. Family events. You know, we do take a week off now and then. You've noticed that might be grievous illness, hard professional obligations, and, you know, most commonly we knock off on account of joyous family affairs.
This one is joyous.
No letter edged in black. This is just happy stuff.
No. We're going to go to our oldest granddaughter's gender reveal party for her baby in the making.
You know, I make a lot of predictions. I've been doing pretty good lately.
Well, you got a 50-50 chance. Are you going to declare?
I'll write it down and hand it to you before the event.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, okay.
This baby has a heartbeat of 164, which is kind of fast, and some people think that means it might be a girl. Could be an old wife.
Got your ideas, and I have mine. There. Okay, another song going on here. This is one, again, you might have heard by various country artists. You know, these songs that originated as commercial propositions, and then they go folk, and then they get re-picked up from folk tradition by people like Jimmy Rogers or the Carter family, and bang, they're back into commercial circulation. But then people are learning them off the radio after that. Then that's the next stage. it's all a little bit complicated. My Mother Was a Lady actually goes back to a song called Two Drummers. Now, refresher here, what's a drummer? No, it's not a member of a band in this case. A drummer is a salesperson, or more like a representative. Somebody who's out representing products, is calling on the merchants in your town, staying in the hotel, and setting up an exhibit maybe in the hotel lobby there, and wining and dining your local merchants to get them to stock their stuff. That's a drummer. A sales rep is a drummer. And this is a song called Two Drummers, but who's the song really about? Well, the drummers are kind of the instigators, but the song is really about a young woman. Okay, now here, I've got to be the historian for a moment. Then young women going to town. Farm girls, small town girls. Farm girls going to small towns, small town girls going to big towns. There's more and more documentation on this as a major American phenomenon. And young women tended to leave the small towns and the farms and small towns kind of first. And the men began to leave afterward if they're in rural urban migration, which means you got young women on their own in an urban setting. Or farm girls on their own, or perhaps in a cohort with other farm girls in a small town setting. And these places have perils, and sometimes just uncomfortable situations. And so this song, Two Drummers, let's see, two drummers sat at dinner and so on, and they encounter one of these working girls. This song dates from, about 1896. I can't pin the exact date on it. It's written by two fellows named Edward B. Marks and Joseph W. Stern. And it starts circulating in the 1890s, and bang, it's out into the folk tradition, so that the text I'm going to be singing is from Louise Pound's book, American Ballads and Folk Songs. She believes it's a ballad. Poor Louise didn't have Google, right? She didn't have newspapers.com and all the things that I'll draw on here and go right to the roots of these songs. But that's kind of good, because then she puts it into her work, and other folklorists did in Idaho, in Missouri, and all over the place. And that indicates, it really had gone feral. It had gone folk on them, and it escaped the confines of commercial circulation. So I'm about to go to Two Drummers, but there's a prelude to this. Probably on if you're on my own Facebook timeline, you'll see a posting there about Willow Cather today, just as of an hour or so ago.
Okay.
And we're touching base with Cather again tonight. One of the most winsome works of fiction in the history of the Great Plains has to be the Hired Girls chapter. Actually, it's a section, the middle section of My Antonia. And the Danish girls and the Bohemian girls. They're going into town to help the farm family at home, help them make the mortgage. And they're going into service for families in town, and working at the hotels, and working at the laundry and that sort of stuff. Working girls, ethnic working girls. And there's some really compelling stuff there that kind of presages this ballad, I think. Don't you think, Dr. Kelley?
Yes, I do.
So the scene from Mrs. Gardner's hotel, could you bless us with it?
Well, I can read it for you.
That'd be good enough.
Okay. Mrs. Gardner was admittedly the best-dressed woman in Black Hawk, drove the best horse, had a smart trap, and a little white and gold sleigh. She seemed indifferent to her possessions, was not half so solicitous about them as her friends were. Her manner was cold, and she talked little. Guests felt that they were receiving, not conferring, a favor when they stayed at her house. Even the smartest traveling men were flattered when Mrs. Gardner stopped to chat with them for a moment. The patrons of the hotel were divided into two classes, those who had seen Mrs. Gardner's diamonds and those who had not. When I stole into the parlor, Anson Kirkpatrick, Marshall Field's man, was at the piano, playing airs from a musical comedy then running in Chicago. He was a dapper little Irishman, very vain, homely as a monkey, with friends everywhere, and a sweetheart in every port, like a sailor. I did not know all the men who were sitting about, but I recognized a furniture salesman from Kansas City, a drug man, and Willie O'Reilly, who traveled for a jewelry house and sold musical instruments. The talk was all about good and bad hotels, actors and actresses, and musical prodigies. The door from the office opened, and Johnny Gardner came in, directing blind Darno. He would never consent to be led. He was a heavy, bulky man on short legs, and he came tapping the floor in front of him with his gold-headed cane. His face was lifted in the light with a show of white teeth, and his shrunken, papery eyelids lay motionless over his blind eyes. "Good evening, gentlemen. No ladies here? Well, we're going to have a little music. Some of you gentlemen going to play for me this evening?" He felt his way directly to the piano. He found the pedals and tried them, ran his hands up and down the keys a few times, tinkling off the scales, then turned to the company. "She seems all right, gentlemen. Nothing happened to her since the last time I was here. Mrs. Gardner, she always has this piano tuned up before I come. Now, gentlemen, I expect you've all got grand voices. Seems like we might have some good old songs tonight." The old men gathered round him as he began to play My Old Kentucky Home. In the middle of a crashing waltz, Darno suddenly began to play softly, and turning to one of the men who stood behind him, he whispered, "Somebody dancing in there." He jerked his head toward the dining room. "I hear little feet. Girls, I expect." Anson Kirkpatrick mounted a chair and peeped over the transom. Springing down, he wrenched open the doors and ran out into the dining room. Tiny and Lena, Antonia and Mary Dusick were waltzing in the middle of the floor. They separated and fled toward the kitchen, giggling. Kirkpatrick caught Tiny by the elbows. "What's the matter with you girls, dancing out here by yourselves when there's a room full of lonesome men on the other side of the partition? Introduce me to your friends, Tiny." The girls, still laughing, were trying to escape. Tiny looked alarmed. "Mrs. Gardner wouldn't like it," she protested. "She'd be awful mad if you was to come out here and dance with us." "Mrs. Gardner's in Omaha, girl. Now, you're Lena, are you? And you're Tony? And you're Mary. Have I got you all straight?" At a word from Kirkpatrick, Darno spread himself out over the piano and began to draw the dance music out of it, while the perspiration shone on his uplifted face. Whenever the dancers paused to change partners or to catch breath, he would boom out softly, "Who's that going back on me? One of these city gentlemen, I bet. Now you girls, you ain't gonna let that floor grow cold." Antonia seemed frightened at first and kept looking questioningly at Lena and Tiny over Willie O'Reilly's shoulder. Tiny Soderball was trim and slender, with lively little feet and pretty ankles. She wore her dresses very short. She was quicker in speech, lighter in movement and manner than the other girls. Mary Dusick was broad and stern in countenance, slightly marked by smallpox, but handsome for all that. She had beautiful chestnut hair, coils of it. Her forehead was low and smooth, and her commanding dark eyes regarded the world indifferently and fearlessly. She looked bold and resourceful and unscrupulous, and she was all of these. They were handsome girls, had the fresh color of their country upbringing, and in their eyes that brilliancy which is called, by no metaphor, alas, the light of youth. Segue for you.
Two drummers sat at dinner in a grand hotel one day. While dining they were chatting in a jolly sort of way. And when a pretty waitress brought them a tray of food, they spoke to her familiarly in a manner rather rude. At first she did not notice them or make the least reply, till one remark was passed that brought tears to her eye. Then facing her tormentors, cheeks now burning red, she looked a perfect picture as appealingly she said, "My mother was a lady, and yours you will allow, and you may have a sister who needs protection now. I came to this great city to find a brother dear, and you not dare insult me, dear, if Jack were only here." 'Tis true, one touch of nature makes the whole world akin, and every word she uttered seemed to pierce their hearts within. She left them stunned and silent, till just one cry of shame, "Forgive me, miss, I meant no harm. Pray tell me, what's your name?" She told him and he cried again, "I know your brother too. We've been friends for many years, and he often speaks of you. He'll be so glad to see you. If you'll only will, I'll take you to him as my wife, for I love you since you said, my mother is a lady, and yours you will allow, and you may have a sister who needs protection now. I came to this great city to find my brother dear. You dare not insult me, sir, if only Jack were here. And you dare not insult me, sir, if only Jack were here. Well, any connections between this and passages from Cather? I see a number of them, don't you? It's a waltz. It's a waltz.
Okay, yes.
It's a waltz. Names. What's your name? See? The drummers. What's your name? In Cather's narrative and here. And this text I just sang is from the Lincoln Star, 1915. It's after the song has left Tin Pan Alley and gone into the folk tradition in Nebraska. Two drummers, or My Mother Was a Lady. I hope we have some guests out here tonight, do we? Any drummers on the line?
Maybe some shady characters. Taylor Broby is back. At first I thought he said he was sitting there with a nice tart. But then I realized he said he's sitting there with a nice tart gimlet. in his hand, and he's preparing for the deanship of the Dr. K and I University.
Yeah, don't hold your breath.
John Rothenberger tuned in. Sort of sad, I think, missing the Chamber of Commerce bingo and wine party to come to our party. So,
we'll try to make it worth your while, Ron.
And you remember a young lad who stopped us on the street and said, "I know you." It wasn't like the Stegner story. I know who you are.
We don't finish that.
No. Aaron Lamb says hi.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to have friends. And this is one way of connecting when we're not gathering. You know, we're crossing a lot of miles with many of the people here.
Yes, we are. Well, in fact, Jody Meckel is she's on her last cruise for the year, she says. Tuning in from Puerto Rico, the coast of Puerto Rico.
Indeed. Well, I'm glad she is. I've got one more sentimental favorite, commercial song that went out and became a folk song. It's a well-known one, I think. Well, you know, it's not so well-known today, but just a generation ago it was. It's a song called In the Baggage Coach Ahead. Its composer in the 1890s was one Gussie L. Davis. This is kind of interesting. Now, this is the sheet music of his song. But it's not Gussie Davis on the front. And I don't think they would have put Gussie Davis on the front because Gussie Davis was a black man. I don't know who this guy is. Frank Leslie is on the front. Maybe he's probably a singer that recorded it on a cylinder recording. Gussie Davis. I'm looking for the little sketch I found of him. I'll get it. Oh yeah, here we go. It's in here. See, I wonder if he may have been born in slavery, because he was born in 1863, lived to 1899, and so his career is cut a little bit short, just as this type of music was coming greatly into style. Sentimental favorites on Tin Pan Alley. I like this part now. The first black songwriter to achieve success in New York's commercial music district, Davis received his musical education at the Nelson Musical College in Cincinnati, denied formal admission because of his race. He agreed to perform janitorial duties at the college for partial wages and in return for private lessons. And that's how he learned music and composing. He's also the author of another song I sang in the folk school, The Boys in Blue. All his songs are deeply sentimental. In the Baggage Coach Ahead, I believe, dates from 1896. All these songs come about the same time. The so-called gay 90s, but more like, my Lord, the songs that you're singing here are far from gay. Now, okay, the plot line of this thing. There is a young father on a railroad coach with a baby that's crying. And the passengers get to complaining about this. We can't get any sleep. Can't get any sleep. Shut that baby up. Where's that baby's mother? And then the crucial reply, she's in the baggage coach ahead. Okay, historical circumstances again. Now, again, if you do your family history, then you find out you got these ancestors, these old coots, who had 3 wives. I mean, sequentially, but I mean. And why is that? It's because so many young mothers died in childbirth. And so the situation in this song is a pretty common thing a century and more ago. Then babies left without mothers to be raised by family. A large number of young men died too. Then mainly on-the-job type of things. With the women, childbirth. Consequently, there were a heck of a lot of blended families a century and more ago. We think that's some kind of recent invention, and it's not whatsoever. Now, a couple things. For one thing, there came to be, and this might be life imitating art, a scam. And this was known to police because they'd say, oh, you fell up for the baggage coach ahead scam. A guy would be riding on a coach, and he didn't have the baby. You know, that's in the song, but not in the scam. Babies would be too much trouble for crooks. They'd be riding in there, and he's in visible distress, and in the presence of wealthy people. You know, he'd situate himself, and oh, what's the matter? My wife, God rest her soul, has passed away, and she's in a coffin in the baggage coach ahead. And now they tell me I have to pay the freight charges before they'll unload the coffin, and I don't have enough money to pay the freight. Can we do anything to help? Well, it's $100. You can see where this goes, right? And the police got used to this. This is an interesting bit of social history, but of course it's the term that the cops applied to it is right from the ballad, the baggage coach ahead. And maybe the crooks were inspired by the ballad. Now I got another one here. Minot, North Dakota. The report actually comes from the Topeka State Journal in Kansas, but a report on a flood, Mouse River flood. Those of you from North Dakota know that's, like every other year. Mouse River flooded. This is in 1910. And a whole bunch of passengers coming from the east on the Great Northern Railroad, hundreds of them are stuck hanging around the depot in Minot. And a reporter goes down, starts to interview him, saying, they're all complaining. And the reporter writes, I kid you not, there was a pitiful scene on one of the coaches. A man caring for his little 2-week-old baby with his dead wife in the baggage coach ahead. He got on the train at Chinook, Montana, Friday morning and was going to St. Paul to bury his wife. Some kind-hearted ladies were looking after the baby. You'll see in just a moment, this exactly follows the plot line of the song. I don't believe this. Is this reporter having us on? That's my sense. You got a stringer in Minot writing for the wire services. Who's going to know? And so he puts that into the story. Yeah. The baggage coach ahead. I like also that I find this song in the Joni O'Brien collection that I went through at Wichita State University. I got her typescript of the baggage coach ahead. So it's circulating as folk tradition still in the 1960s when Joni was collecting ballads on the plains. Okay, this is not the easiest song, but I've worked on it a little bit. I've tried it before and pretty well butchered it. Wish me luck. On a dark, stormy night, as the train rattled on, all the passengers had gone to bed, except a young man with a baby in his arms, who sat there with bowed down head. Now the innocent one began crying just then, as though his poor heart would break. One angry man said, "Make that child stop its noise, for it's keeping us all awake." "Put it out," said another, "don't keep it in here. We paid for our berths and want rest." But never a word said the man with the child, as he fondled it close to his breast. "Oh, where is its mother? Go take it to her." This a lady then softly said. "I wish that I could," was the man's sad reply, "but she's dead in the coach ahead." waken her in the baggage coach ahead. Every eye filled with tears when his story he told of a wife who was faithful and true. He told how he'd saved all his earnings for years just to build up a home for two. How when heaven had sent them this sweet little babe, their happy young lives were blessed. His heart seemed to break when he mentioned her name, and in tears tried to tell them the rest. Every woman rose to assist with the child. There were mothers and wives on that train. And as soon as the little one was sleeping in peace, with no thought of sorrow or pain, next morning at station, he bade all goodbye. God bless you, he softly said. Each one had a story to tell in the home of a baggage coach ahead. While the train rolled onward, the husband sat in tears, thinking of the happiness of just a few short years. For baby's face brings pictures of the cherished hope that's dead, but baby's cries can't waken her in the baggage coach ahead. Can't stop. While the train rolled onward, a husband sat in tears, thinking of the happiness of just a few short years. Baby's face brings pictures of the cherished hope that's dead, but baby's cries can't waken her in the baggage coach ahead. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, people crying out there.
Well, if they're not, what's the matter with them, huh? Big night last night for Dr. Kelley. You want to tell us about it?
That's a big transition. Yes, we haven't done an official head count yet. We're going to be looking back at pictures. But we had 70 chairs and they were filled. And there were 5 cocktail tables with people standing around them and others standing room only. So we feel we had a great turnout. Everybody loved the music. We were so glad to have Cat Sank Trio.
Yeah, it wasn't me. It was actual music.
Oh, yeah. We did have other musicians, yes. And they're a community favorite. And it seems, especially among the literary aficionados, they love Cat Sank Trio to come in. 6 books that got published this past year. We celebrated all of them, so each of the authors got to read. We had 2 out-of-state authors that just couldn't get in for various reasons, but the students pitched in and read on their behalf and told stories about their books, so it was great.
You know, I didn't think you had a single prima donna among this crowd.
No, but we had potential for it.
Oh. Well, I've been telling you, I need to bring you another manuscript so you have another prima donna on the program.
We'll have one. Well, we had some celebrities, so I was so excited to meet Antonia Gonzalez, who I've heard on public radio for decades. She was one of the authors reading, and she just did a splendid job. And then again,
That's Antonia Gonzalez, National Native News.
yes, I should have said that, but yeah, so she reports on Native news internationally, nationally, locally. She covers 4 years those stories, good and bad. And then bright and early, she was up, and we had a 7 o'clock session this morning. Another interview, Prairie Public. Bill Thomas was there, and he recorded it. And I see he's already shooting out some MP3s about it, so we'll be able to share that.
Yeah, we'll see if people know about that. You'll have it on the press page.
Oh, yeah.
I'll put it out on the Plains Folk page, too.
Yes. Yeah, so it was very exciting.
So you don't have any letdown, are you?
Am I?
After
no,
the
I'm
ball.
actually still up.
After the ball is over?
No, I'm still pretty wound up.
You didn't catch the lead in there, did you? After the ball is over? After a big blizzard, December of 1893, in this part of the country here, and I stumbled across this as the most recent blizzard blew in this the middle of this week. It was pretty hairy. It was in 1997 we began the custom of naming blizzards, like they name hurricane. This had to have been Zeke, I think, whatever this one was. But it did blow over. It did blow over in just 24 hours. And then I started looking for blizzard verse out there, and sure enough, here's this bit of doggerel that was making the rounds in 1893 in newspapers on the northern plains after this band of nasty weather had swept through. And it's in keeping with the evening's program because the poet appropriated a popular song of the day called After the Ball is Over. And I thought you might be feeling like this. After the ball is over, after the break of morn, after the dancers leaving, after the stars are gone, many a heart is aching. If you could read them all, many the hopes that have vanished after the ball. After the blizzard's over, after the break of dawn, after the snow has drifted, after the storm is gone, many's the nose that's frosted. Lord, how I wish was warm. Shrunken and thin is the coal pile after the storm. You know why that appealed to me? I recall how just as this one was coming in this week, you sent me out to read the gauge on the propane tank. Oh, after the blizzard's over, after the break of dawn, after the snow has lifted, after the storm is gone, many's the nose that's frosted. Lord, how we wished was warm. Shrunken and thin is the coal pile after the storm. Well, I suppose it comes time in the evening when we don't quite bid farewell without expressing fond hope that some of this stuck and feel like you and we maybe know just a little bit more, have a little more appreciation of the country where we live. softly. Seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy, are not cloudy, are not cloudy all the day. No, the skies are not cloudy all day. After the ball, Dr. Kelley.
We now conclude today's edition of the Folk School on Willow Creek. We invite you to join us again, not next week, but March 17, Friday night at 8 p.m. Central Time for more songs and stories.